details. So, college football fix. It's something we talked about earlier in the show today. And I know Haydad's disappointed that we've been almost an hour and a half without talking about realignment and getting people in the right places for conferences. And so we don't want him to be disappointed. So let's go back to the question that we were playing a second ago. There's one side of the conference realignment. If things don't stop where they are, and I don't think anybody believes that things are going to stop right where they are. If the Big Ten adds teams, if the Big Ten ends up with Notre Dame, if they add Oregon and Washington and just Oregon and Washington, or maybe Oregon and Washington and a couple of others, and the SEC feels compelled to move, who would the SEC want? And I think that list is a little bit easier than who would want the SEC. Now, the list of who would like to be in the SEC is long and distinguished. But what about who would be right for the SEC? Let's say, for the purposes of this conversation, that both Notre Dame, well, first of all, Notre Dame ends up in the Big Ten. And the current members of the ACC figure out through some legal wrangling and billable hours that they are able to somehow get out of the grant of rights deal. Maybe the conference dissolves. Maybe there's a loophole. Maybe they're willing to swallow the financial bullet that it takes to get out. Whatever the rationale. So let's assume that Notre Dame makes the transition to the Big Ten, and North Carolina decides to go to the Big Ten. Who wants to be in the SEC? You're playing the matchmaking game. Who says, SEC, we want you, and the SEC says, hey, team, we want you as well? We did this a little bit earlier, but I'm not sure that we came to like a final, these are the teams.
No, and it's such a fascinating conversation, too, because, I mean, quite frankly, this is going to be who your favorite teams are playing eventually. Because, right, regardless of what the president said today, there's going to be more than 6 teams in the SEC at some point in the future, and not so distant future. Like, this is coming, right? Maybe not today, maybe not this offseason, but it's coming, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hard yes.
Yes.
So
hard yes.
So if North Carolina goes, I feel like the best mutual partnership with those who are left would be NC State.
Okay.
Because
more so than Clemson.
More so than Clemson. Because, one, I think you would have less resistance with NC State, first of all. Second, it is, although TV markets don't matter anymore, it's a growing, nice area. Raleigh, North Carolina, and the state itself is growing like crazy, but Raleigh especially is really nice that you're not in yet. You're in upstate South Carolina already. You know, I mean, Clemson doesn't bring you anything you're not already in. So you would add a state that you don't have that's adjacent to a couple states you already have. Your television network, for what it's worth, is headquartered in that state. They care about football. They want to win in football. They bring you a good brand, a good basketball program. It checks all of the boxes that I think you want to check first.
Okay.
To me.
And we started down this road earlier. If you go back a decade to when A&M and Missouri joined the SEC, we've talked about fit a lot. And fit's important, but eyeballs and geographic footprint and television markets and all that stuff's important as well. And those are the reasons that Missouri made sense, whereas Texas A&M made sense for all the reasons. Big state, big footprint, maybe recruiting advantage for everybody by having an SEC team in the state. Cultural fit, traditions, wanted to be there. All of that stuff rolled into one with Texas A&M. And while Missouri is fine, I mean, they're a fine member of the SEC. It's been a decade, and it doesn't feel like Missouri fits. And I don't know that it's ever going to feel like Missouri fits. And I don't think that's great for your conference. So
even when they were winning the East, it didn't feel like they fit.
No.
It didn't feel like they fitted.
No.
So I don't know if the grammar was right there, but
Close enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Who'd they play in the championship? I went to both of those games.
They played Auburn and then they played Alabama.
And got soundly beaten both, right?
Right.
Yep.
Both times.
Yeah.
Both times.
Yeah.
And those are pretty good Missouri teams. They were good on the defensive side. They scored some points. Those were good teams.
The one that played Auburn only had one loss. They might have played for a national title if they had won.
Yeah. I do think NC State checks that box as a fit. Who else? The alignment thing does continue to spin and shake out. And if you don't get Notre Dame to the SEC, which seems unlikely, I'm not sure that it's quite as unlikely as some national people want to make it, where they just scoff at the idea. I don't think it's like just a complete throwaway, absolutely not, there's no way, forget about it. But I do think it is a long shot at best. So I heard somebody talking about this the other day. I don't remember where I heard it, so forgive me for not giving credit. But if Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten, and your number one target is North Carolina, I've heard people use the phrase, make them an offer they can't refuse. Well, hold on a second, what does that mean? Because here's what we know the SEC is not doing. The SEC is not paying any member more than they pay another member. Right? That doesn't work. It didn't work in the Big 12. In fact, it's part of the reason the Big 12 fell apart. A big part of the reason. Because Texas and Oklahoma got an unbalanced share, and it made everybody else feel less. In the SEC, the University of Texas will get the same distribution that Vanderbilt gets. Kentucky gets the same distribution that Ole Miss gets. Oklahoma will get the same money that Florida gets, and so on. That's how it works. So when you say make them an offer they can't refuse, what does that mean? Okay, what about a package deal? What about, North Carolina, we want you, but to get you, we're willing to take who else? If North Carolina says we're not coming without Virginia and Duke, do you say North Carolina, Virginia, and Duke, come on down?
No. I mean,
really?
They don't get to make those kind of decisions. Duke, what is that? No, I wouldn't.
So what? To me, Duke would feel like Missouri. It would not feel like a fit. But I think the other two would. And that gets you two additional states where you don't have a footprint, two massive markets, two growing markets. And the offshoot is you probably pick up a win in football and you get maybe the bluest of blue bloods in basketball. I'm not sure that I'm seeing the absolutely not on Duke that you are.
I just look at it in terms of the SEC is the one that should be making demands, not the schools that want to join the SEC. You can join the SEC or you can, try to make it out there in the wasteland.
I guess the question is, so the question is, how badly do you want a North Carolina? How badly do you want? Do you want North Carolina? And maybe you want Virginia also, but you don't really let it be known that you want Virginia. And so you get North Carolina and Virginia, but you have to take Duke, and then maybe you take one more. Borky, your point about Clemson being that they're kind of a football power and they're recruiting the same area that Auburn and Georgia and Tennessee and others are recruiting, that makes sense. Now, if we're talking about fit, Clemson fits.
Yes, they do.
They fit in football. They're good enough in basketball. They care deeply about baseball at Clemson. It's a passionate fan base.
Game day feel, and not that this totally
Clemson
matters.
Feels a
but
lot like Auburn to me.
when you're going to it's Auburn with a lake. I mean, when people say that, buddy, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Auburn's nightlife is much better, though. Again, if Clemson gets added to the SEC, guys, go stay in Greenville. Clemson, the town shuts it down after like 10. It's horrible when it comes to that. But culture, mentality, arrogance, undeserved arrogance in some cases, like everything about them fits perfectly.
Well, that fits in the SEC.
Absolutely.
Pretty much everybody's got a level of that to some degree, some more than others.
It's what it takes.
Why am I having so much trouble with Florida State? What is it about? Because I'm not a Florida State hater.
Because it's not 1999.
But Florida State kind of checks the same boxes that Clemson does, don't they? I mean, big football stadium, good brand, care about baseball. Basketball's been pretty good.
They used to be good. They used to be good.
Oh, okay, so
in football.
They'll feel comfortable standing next to Tennessee.
I mean, I just feel like Florida State feels like an athletic program that's on the decline. They've been bad now for 5 straight years, 6 straight years in football. It's just tough. There's just a funk around that program.
Here's what we're missing in all of this. I think this has been said probably 100 times. We know that the conferences are not driving this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is being driven by 2 entities, ESPN and Fox. That's it. Now, did USC and UCLA want a way out? Sure, but did the execs at Fox know that? Yeah. And Fox is the number 1 TV partner with the Big Ten. And they're about to make. So this whole thing is being driven by those 2. So here's the question that matters more than anything. We can talk about fit. We can talk about brands. We can talk about football success or basketball success. None of that really matters. There's only one thing that matters. And this is a really jaded way to look at it. The only thing that matters is what is going to cause ESPN to pay you more money than they are paying right now. Because there are 2 layers to this, right? Number 1, if you bring 4 more teams into the SEC, I don't care who the 4 are. For the purposes of this conversation, let's say it's North Carolina and Virginia and Clemson and Florida State, whatever. The first thing that has to happen is ESPN has to agree to pay 4 shares more than they're currently paying. Because you're not going to take the cookie that's currently cut into 16 equal pieces and then recut that cookie into 20 pieces so that everybody gets a smaller piece. Nobody in the SEC is agreeing to that. So ESPN has to be willing to give you a larger cookie that you can cut 20 ways, and at minimum, everybody gets the same size piece of cookie that they're getting right now. But in reality, what you're looking for is you bring in 4 brands, schools, programs, using the example from a second ago, North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, and Florida State, and ESPN goes, that just got sexy. And not only are we willing to give you a cookie big enough to compensate for the 4 of them, we're going to give you a cookie that's 30% bigger than that. And now the revenue is increasing for everybody. And that's what we're really probably not talking about enough in this entire conversation. Hey, whoa, which school fits and what's the viewership? It doesn't matter what we think. It matters what ESPN thinks. And in the case of Big Ten, it matters what Fox thinks. Because they're the ones that are writing the checks that are going to foot the bill for all of this.
You're kind of talking me into Duke right now.
I'm not trying to talk you into anybody.
Just because we had somebody text in and say this, like they had not a thing in football, nothing at all, zero. But Mississippi State and Cameron on Super Tuesday.
Yeah, that's fun.
And there's monetary value there because
now, by the way,
40 Duke basketball games is valuable to a television network. Really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 other programs in the country that can say that. One of them already exists in the SEC.
By the way, let's just say you added those 4 programs that we were kicking around, North Carolina, Virginia. I guess I'll substitute Duke for Clemson and Florida State. Okay, football is what it is. Basketball just turned into a bear. And baseball got even more difficult.
Oh, good.